The Omega device. The joke. The Kreisel Armada arrived on a Tuesday, which the humans would later find darkly funny, because nothing about the end of the world should be scheduled on a Tuesday. 3,000 ships dropped out of hyperspace above Earth in a formation shaped like a closed fist. Commander Veltraxis of the Kreisel High Fleet stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Contempt, and watched the blue-green planet spin lazily beneath him, utterly unaware of how close it stood to ruin. Species designation, human, said his tactical officer, a wiry creature named Orn who had scanned 600 worlds in his long career. Technology level, primitive. Weapons, chemical propellant firearms, a handful of orbital satellites, no functional deflector shielding, no faster than light travel. Veltraxis let out a low, rattling laugh, the Kreisel equivalent of a chuckle. They haven't even left their solar system properly.
No, Commander.
And this is the species the Whisper Network warned us about? The one flagged as anomalous threat, do not underestimate. Orn checked his console again, as if the data might have changed out of embarrassment. That is correct, sir. The warning came from the Threlkin Concord before their homeworld went dark 3 years ago. Well. Veltraxis folded 4 of his 6 arms behind his back. The Threlkin were always excitable. Let's see what has them so frightened. He opened a channel to the planet's surface, not to negotiate, but to make an announcement, the way a lion might roar before it ever needs to pounce. The message was translated instantly by the ship's linguistic core and broadcast to every radio, television, and network device on Earth. People of Earth. I am Commander Veltraxis of the Kreisel Dominion. Your world has been selected for annexation. Resistance is not merely futile. It is, from where I am standing, adorable. You have 12 hours to demonstrate a meaningful defense, after which my fleet will proceed with planetary pacification. I do this not out of cruelty, but out of scientific curiosity. I would like to see what you have. For 11 hours and 40 minutes, Earth did almost nothing that impressed him. Fighter jets scrambled and were casually swatted from the sky by point defense lasers. A handful of nuclear missiles were launched and intercepted with the same effort a man might spend swatting a mosquito. News anchors around the world spoke in trembling voices about last stands and final prayers. Veltraxis watched it all from orbit, sipping something warm and bitter from a ceremonial cup, and found the whole affair almost sweet in its futility. They're praying, Orn reported, monitoring global communications, to various deities, asking for intervention. Let them, Veltraxis said. It won't come. At the 11-hour and 50-minute mark, something changed. Every radar station, every listening post, every sensor array on the Kreisel fleet detected a colossal surge of power originating from a facility beneath the Nevada desert, a facility that, according to their scans just hours earlier, had not existed. Report, Veltraxis snapped, his amusement curdling into the first whisper of unease. Unknown structure, sir. Depth, 4 kilometers below the surface. Energy signature, unrecognized. It does not match any known human technology. It does not match any technology in our database. Human technology level is primitive, Veltraxis said slowly, as though repeating it might make it true again. Yes, sir. That is what confuses me. On the bridge, several of his officers exchanged glances, the kind of glances that precede either a great disaster or a great embarrassment, and no one yet knew which. 2. The bunker. 4 kilometers beneath the Nevada desert, in a facility that had been carved out of solid rock over the course of 81 years by an organization so classified it did not officially have a name. Dr. Amara Osei stood in front of a control console the size of a small house and watched a countdown reach its final digits. She was 63 years old, silver-haired, and had spent the better part of her adult life waiting for a day she'd hoped would never come. Beside her stood General Marcus Webb, who had inherited command of Project Omega from his predecessor 11 years earlier, along with a single folder marked iron case of existential threat, read immediately, tell no one. You understand, Osei said, not looking up from her instruments, that once this activates, there's no undoing it. It doesn't have an off switch. It wasn't built with one. I read the file, Doctor. The file was written by people who are all dead now, working from research they didn't fully understand, based on a signal we received in 1947 from somewhere we still can't locate on any star chart. She finally turned to face him. I've spent 40 years of my life on this machine, and I can tell you the honest truth. I don't know exactly what it does. I know what it's supposed to do. There's a difference. Above them, filtering down through kilometers of reinforced rock, the sound of the world ending had already begun. Sirens, broadcasts, the distant tremor of missile launches that would do nothing at all. Webb's radio crackled. The president's voice, tired and stripped of all its practiced calm, came through. General, they're not slowing down. We are out of options. Every conventional defense has failed. If Omega is real, if it does even a fraction of what the file says, now is the time. Webb looked at Osei. Osei looked at the console, where a single word blinked patiently, waiting. Ready. Do it, Webb said. Osei placed both hands on the activation panel, an old habit, from decades of drills, though the machine required only a single keystroke. She thought, briefly, of the scientists who had come before her, the ones who had listened to that impossible signal 79 years ago and devoted their entire lives to building something they didn't fully understand, on the faith that humanity would someday need it. For what it's worth, she said quietly, I hope they were wrong about all of this. She pressed the key. 3. The laughter stops. Aboard the Contempt, Commander Veltraxis felt the ship shudder, not from an attack, not from any weapon his senses could identify, but from something far stranger. Every screen on the bridge flickered simultaneously. The lights dimmed and then brightened to an intensity that made his eyes ache. And then, for exactly 4 seconds, every single instrument on his ship went completely, perfectly silent. Report, he bellowed, his earlier confidence draining out of him like water through cracked stone. Orn's voice, when it came, had lost its professional calm entirely. Sir, I'm reading. I don't understand what I'm reading. Explain. The energy signature from the surface facility. It didn't stay on the surface. It's everywhere, sir. It's in our engines. It's in our weapon systems. It's in the ship's core. On the main view screen, something began to happen that Veltraxis would spend the rest of his life trying to describe to people who would never quite believe him. The stars themselves seemed to bend, just slightly, around a point somewhere above the Nevada desert, as though space itself had developed a very small, very deliberate wrinkle. And then, one by one, across the entire armada, ships began to go dark. Not destroyed. Not exploded. Simply off. Their weapons ceased to function. Their engines fell silent. Their shields flickered out like candles pinched between 2 fingers. 3,000 vessels, the pride of the Chrysal Dominion, drifted in orbit around a planet they had called primitive 12 hours earlier, now as inert as scrap metal. It's not attacking us, Orn said, staring at his readouts in something close to horror. It's unmaking us. Selectively. Our weapons. Our propulsion. It's leaving life support intact. It's leaving communications intact. It's leaving everything intact except our ability to do harm. Veltraxis felt something he had not felt in 300 years of conquest. Genuine, cold fear. What in the void is that thing? He would not learn the full answer that day, or ever, not really. What he would learn, what the entire galaxy would eventually learn, whispered from species to species like a ghost story told around a dying fire, was a fragment of the truth. Project Omega had not been built by humans alone. The 1947 signal had come from a civilization so ancient, so far beyond the current galaxy's understanding, that its builders had left before recorded history began, seeding a handful of young, vulnerable worlds with dormant technology meant for exactly one purpose: to protect species too young to protect themselves, but only once, and only when the danger was absolute. It was not a weapon. Weapons destroy. The Omega device did something stranger and, in its own way, crueler. It reached into the fundamental physics of aggression itself, into the specific technological signatures of harm, and it simply turned them off, planet-wide, fleet-wide, for as long as the threat persisted. Commander, Orn said, very quietly, my board shows every offensive system across the fleet reading 0. We cannot fire. We cannot maneuver with any speed. We cannot even scan them with hostile intent. The sensors reject the command. Veltraxis stared down at the small blue world that, 12 hours ago, he had called primitive. He watched as human fighter jets, the same fighter jets his fleet had swatted from the sky with such casual disdain, now flew, unbothered and unthreatened, directly beneath his powerless warships. Open a channel, he said finally, his 6 arms hanging loose at his sides for the first time in decades. To whom, sir? To them. 4. The answer. In the Nevada facility, an alert chimed softly on Dr. Osei's console. General Webb crossed the room in 3 strides. "They're hailing us," he said, disbelief cracking his voice. "The alien fleet. They want to talk." Osei allowed herself, for the first time in 11 hours, to sit down. The message that came through, translated by systems humanity did not build and did not fully understand, systems that had apparently been quietly listening and learning for 79 years, was short. "This is Commander Veltraxis of the Chrysal Dominion. Our weapons no longer function. Our engines are crippled. We do not know what you have done, or how, or whether it can be undone. We ask only this: what do you want from us?" Webb looked at Osei. Osei looked at the folder that had sat unopened in a vault for 11 years, the one written by people long dead, and found, tucked into its final page, a single handwritten line she had read 100 times but never fully understood until this exact moment. "It will not let them hurt you. It will not let you hurt them either, once they stop. What happens after that is up to the people, not the machine." She nodded slowly to Webb, who keyed the response himself, speaking not as a general but, for just this once, as something closer to an ordinary, exhausted human being. "We don't want anything from you, Commander. We want you to leave. Go home. Tell whoever sent you what happened here today. And tell them this world was never as primitive as it looked." There was a long pause, 11 seconds, according to the transcript later declassified, that felt to everyone listening like 11 years. Then Veltraxis's voice returned, quieter now, stripped of every trace of the mockery it had carried 12 hours before. "Understood. For what it is worth, we laughed at you. I laughed at you. I will not make that mistake again."
Ve eftermet.
The Chrysal fleet limped out of the solar system 3 days later, their weapon systems restored the moment their ships crossed the edge of Earth's gravitational influence, as though the device had simply been waiting to confirm they were truly leaving before letting go. They never returned. Word spread, slowly at first, through channels no human would ever trace, and then faster, the way any good ghost story spreads among those who fear the dark. A small, backward, blue-green world, tucked in an unremarkable arm of an unremarkable galaxy, was not to be underestimated. Something slept beneath its deserts that could reach across the vacuum of space and, without firing a single shot, disarm an armada. On Earth, the truth of what had happened that Tuesday was compressed, sanitized, and fed to the public in careful pieces over the following months, enough to explain the missing invasion fleet, not enough to reveal what truly lay beneath the Nevada desert. Dr. Amara Osei retired 18 months later and spent her remaining years teaching physics to graduate students who had no idea their soft-spoken professor had once saved the world with the press of a single key. General Webb kept one memento from that day: the original folder, its final handwritten line now committed permanently to memory. He had it framed and hung it, unlabeled, in his study, where visitors sometimes asked what it meant and he always gave the same quiet answer: "It means we got lucky enough, once, to have people who thought about tomorrow." Deep beneath the desert, the Omega device returned to its silent, patient sleep, dormant again, waiting, the way it had waited for 79 years before, for a threat it hoped would never come, and for a species that had, in the end, turned out to be far less primitive, and far less alone, than either the aliens or the humans themselves had ever quite believed. And somewhere out in the dark between the stars, in taverns, and command decks and gathering halls belonging to species humanity would likely never meet, a new rule quietly began to spread among those who still hunted young, unguarded worlds. Never laugh at the blue one. Not until you're sure it's finished laughing back. The end.